Adventures of...
From out of the past come the thundering hoofbeat of the great horse Silver.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men?
Faster than a speeding bullet.
To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Swift and powerful monarch of the oceans.
Young Billy has been granted the power to summon awesome forces at the utterance of a single word.
Steve Austin, astronaut, a man barely alive.
It's time for the Adventures of Podcast with your hosts fighting for truth, justice, and the American way, Pete Gould and Peter Alden.
Hey everybody, my name is Pete Gould.
I'm Peter Alden.
And welcome to the Adventures of... Do we say that out loud? I don't know. With Pete and Pete. And I'll give you an idea of how this podcast started. We originally wanted to do on the Adventures of Superboy TV series. We were going to talk about that.
We were going to break down every episode.
And then we said, well, if we're going to do that, we could do the Batman series. And that started steamrolling into, well, we can make this about just about everything. You know, we like a lot of the same stuff, but it's broad. It's all over the place. So give us an idea. What is this? So we decided we're going to make it heroes. And what is a hero?
Right.
What do we consider to be a hero?
Right. Well, and the amazing adventures of not focusing on any one particular character. So, you know, one week we might do an episode of Superman, then, you know, the next week will be Shazam or Spider-Man or Captain America. Just, and we're not going to focus on just the TV shows. We're going to focus on, well, we were just talking about Power Records.
Yeah.
And some of the audio adventures.
For those of you who may not know, back in the 70s, Power Records, back in the old days, kids, we had what was called records. And it was a book and record series. You would sit there. It was a comic book that they actually recorded an audio dramatization for it. And every time you heard, you know, boing, you'd turn the page. And Power Records was, well, what the hell? Let's get right into it. Power Records was what? Like a little...
It was a subsidiary of Peter Pan Records.
Okay.
Power Records presents Captain America and the Falcon in And a Phoenix Shall Arise.
Power Records presents The Incredible Hulk at Bay.
Power Records presents The Mark of the Man-Wolf.
Power Records presents Man-Thing in Night of the Laughing Dead.
Somehow or another, they came up with the licensing
bubbling
for Marvel, DC, major television shows, Hanna-Barbera characters. I mean, this one little company was producing these book and record series with Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, Fantastic Four, Star Trek, Planet of the Apes, $6 Million Man, just everything and anything that was popular in back in the day.
Right.
And this was before internet, other than the George Reeves Superman show and Adam West's Batman show. Power Records came out just a little bit before Shazam and ISIS on TV, so this was it for kids. This is what you had.
And I remember kind of trading them a little bit, sort of like trading cards, like, hey, I've got the Batman record, let me borrow your Spider-Man, and we would switch them out. That's how we would hear them all.
Yep.
Because there was no downloading in those days, kids.
And Power Records was also the master of repurposing. They came out as 45s, they came out as LPs, they came out as cassettes, they mixed and matched the stories on different albums.
So that's one of the things we're going to talk about. Another thing we'll talk about is movie serials, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm a huge Superman fan. Let's put it on Front Street. This is Pete Gould. I am a huge Superman fan, comic books. I love just about anything with a shield and a cape on it, I'm all about. Pete loves Batman and stuff, but you're really big on two characters that I dig, but I don't know much about. So he's going to be I'll be the Superman expert, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. And for all things Lone Ranger and Tarzan, we're going to turn to you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I two shows that I grew up loving. Well, I love the Lone Ranger radio series, and Superman had a radio series, and Batman actually appeared on that, and Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers had their own series, but the Lone Ranger was Lone Ranger, Green Hornet, Tarzan, all that stuff. I loved all those. Loved them all.
And radio serials Again, I'm not presuming the age of the people listening to us. Back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, I guess, a little bit in the 30s, they were the TV shows of the day. TV wasn't as prevalent, so they were dramatized stories, 15 minutes, a half hour, whatever, and you would hear, come with me, Johnny, okay, and, tune in again next week, and that's what you'd hear. And then on movies, the movie serials was episodic television, but you went to the movie theater to see it before your movie.
Right. You went to go see a movie, but you'd also get a newsreel and Chapter 12 of Superman.
Right, and it always ended on this cliffhanger, will Superman survive? Tune in again next week. Well, instead of tuning in, you actually had to buy your ticket. What they really should have said is, will he survive? Come back next week and pay more of your hard-earned money to find out.
Because movies were all of a nickel.
Yeah. That's still pretty big money back then if you were a kid, right?
Right.
So we had that, and so we like a lot of the different things as far as serials go. One show, and I cannot thank you enough for hipping me to this, it's the worst sounding show on paper. It really is. It's an adventure series about an insurance adjuster. I'll let you wrap your head around that. How boring could that possibly be? I'm telling you, it's the greatest thing you've ever heard. Tell them about it. It's called...
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Well, no, this is what really made me had to listen to it because it's so absurd. You have to listen to it. What's their big tagline? You've already got an adventure show about an insurance adjuster, but that's not it, kids.
The man with the action-packed expense account. America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
How can you go wrong?
and it ended up being yours truly, Johnny Dollar, and Suspense were the last two radio shows aired during the golden age of radio.
Yeah.
They both those were the last two shows running, and they both ended in 1962.
Jeez. Now, I really am underselling it because it does. It sounds like a stupid premise. But then when you start think on its face, and then you think about it, when you hear an episode or two, it actually makes a lot of sense because he would get an insurance claim. He was I don't know what the hell a freelance insurance agent is anyway.
Well, he doesn't work for he doesn't work for Prudential.
But was that
Life.
a thing?
I'm sure it probably was.
Yeah. So he would get this call and say, hey, Johnny, we've got a check here. We have an arson thing, and we think it's fishy. Go check it out. And then this guy. So basically, it's a detective series, really.
Yes.
And, of course, shenanigans would ensue. People are trying to shoot at him and kill him and stuff.
But his superpower was the fact that he could manipulate his expense account like nobody else could.
And if nothing else, you look at it for its time frame. So my favorite part is just listening to the economics of the time.
Yeah.
Item 37. One-way ticket from Hartford, Connecticut to San Francisco, $113.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Universal Adjustment Bureau, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is an accounting of expenditures during my investigation of the Tears of Night matter. Item 8, $6.20 gas for the rental car that I drove down here to the Lake Mojave Resort in Colorado.
Exactly.
But it was great. And he said, how many Johnny Dollars were there?
There were at least 5.
I mean, that's pretty good for even just at that, to have 5 people just kind of blow through there and people accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
read somewhere on the always accurate Wikipedia.
Right. No one ever gets in there and changes any of that.
No. That it actually did start out as a legitimate insurance, as an actual PI show.
Yes.
It was a crime series, and then it went off the air. They retooled it, and that's when he became the insurance guy.
Right. He still worked for insurance, but he was more of a detective than he was an insurance investigator. So yeah, they went off the air. They retooled it and brought it back, and they brought it back in the weekly 15-minute serial format, and that's what just made it take off. Because you think, okay, it's only a 15-minute episode, but you're doing 5 episodes a week, so you've got a good long way to go to make your story, so you can develop the characters, you can create the situations more than you can in a half an hour.
Right.
And so it gave them an opportunity to just really expand with it. And as I said, it caught on and just took off and was one of the top-rated shows until it went off the air.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people out there may know this, that there's a lot of people that don't know this. What do the Lone Ranger, a Western, have in common with a superhero from DC Comics?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yes. I hoped you did. That's why I asked you. But tell them, there was a character called the Green Hornet, which DC Comics eventually bought.
Right, but the Green Hornet was created by George W. Trendle, the same guy who created the Lone Ranger. And the Green Hornet is the Lone Ranger's great nephew.
Now, is that the first time something like that's ever happened, where there was like a that you could think of where there was a superhero type character? Because again, that's another thing we want to describe. We want to think, what do we consider superheroes? And I would definitely consider Lone Ranger a superhero type.
Absolutely. I'm thinking, anybody that wears a weird costume or a mask, or maybe has bionic parts, you can qualify that as a superhero, and it's funny because sooner or later we're going to get to the world of just the goofball superheroes that were created that actually got time either on television or on the radio. And we're just, where did they come up with that, and who thought that was going to work?
I'm looking directly at you, the powers of Matthew Starr.
Yes. Well,
but that was another thing that we really wanted to get into, and we have a shared love because we're both of that era of we're both kids of the 70s, and the TV that was coming up then. For me, my very first, Christopher Reeve always will be Superman to me. He always is. That's my Superman. But the first person I ever saw wear the cape was George Reeves. And I have a fondness and a love for that because I grew up watching him on the reruns. And, of course, Adam West is Batman. We watched him, again. But as far as original content, weekly superhero, I couldn't get enough of Shazam.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that was basically the first one. And you could even argue that Isis was the first female superhero because Wonder Woman had not come out yet.
Okay, really? I thought it was around the same time.
Nope, because Shazam premiered in 74, Isis joined in 75, and they were both off the air by 76. Wonder Woman didn't come out till...
Okay, that's right. I was like 78, I think.
Yeah.
We're not counting the Kathy Lee Crosby
fiasco.
fiasco.
No, we're not counting that.
Because we all know Wonder Woman is blonde and wears a tracksuit.
And fights Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island. He wore the same dang white suit in Wonder Woman that I think they caught him like on an off day of Fantasy Island.
Well, they borrowed it from Christopher Lee, all right?
Yeah.
He was going up against Bond with it. He's like, well, look, I don't have anything to do with this suit. And Rourke's going, I look good in this.
And each week, I think, when we focus in on something, each week is not going to be a hodgepodge like it is tonight.
This is just introductory.
Yeah, but we'll focus on something, and people look back on some of these older shows from the 70s, and Marvel tried several times to create shows. The Incredible Hulk worked. Mm-hmm. Spider-Man got good reviews, but it was just too expensive to produce. Doctor Strange never took off.
Yeah.
Captain America I liked it because I'm a Captain America fan, but that one didn't take. And
well, it was their stunning lead star.
Hey, don't knock Red Brown. I like Red Brown.
Yeah, he did what he could.
He looked like Captain America, that's for sure.
He absolutely did. And I enjoy the fact that Steve Rogers, for some inexplicable reason, is cruising around town in his custom conversion van.
Well, it was
with a motorcycle.
It was the 70s.
That's true.
I mean, come on now.
Well, yeah. Speaking of the 70s, I was watching Shazam and everything. I don't know if it's. As we record this now in October of 2019, I don't know whether we were doing more in the 70s or whether they were pushing more of an agenda, because in Shazam alone, in 3 seasons, I saw people, we have Billy and Mentor driving around in their Winnebago, or it was a Pace, right? But it was an RV.
Right.
So they're in their RV, they're camping. Everyone's camping or riding a horse or skydiving or riding a dirt bike. The kids were doing stuff back then.
Well, they were. And I can tell you, the camping was a true to life thing, because my dad was really into camping too in the 70s, and we would take camping trips in the summertime, and the campgrounds would be packed.
Oh yeah,
they would be packed with people camping. It was a thing. It was a thing in the 70s where people wanted to camp for some odd reason.
Yeah, well, that's me too. The same thing. I think for my 10th birthday, we went to Walt Disney World, and we could have stayed at the Contemporary Hotel. We could have stayed here. No. We went and paid good money to go camp. We went to the Wilderness Campgrounds. I'm like, we could do this at home for free, Dad. He's like, but look, Mickey Mouse. I'm like, all right, you got a point. I'm 10.
Yeah. I remember, my brother and I would have a friend over to spend the night, and we'd set up a tent in the backyard and camp in the backyard. I mean, it was...
I used to do that, too.
It's like, why did I do that?
It was the most pathetic. We're roughing it. And then your dad would walk out, keep it down. Yeah. We're trying to watch TV. I'm like, all right, sorry, Dad. But the reason I brought that up is because they did the same thing with Captain America. He's riding a dirt bike that goes into his conversion van, which at one point popped up a hang glider.
Yes.
I was like, yep, they're just ticking off the boxes. We're going to focus on a lot of this stuff. We do have some celebrity guests that we are going to be having in the future. That is one of our hopes. We have a producer.
Don't tell anybody, because if we announce it and then we can't.
Yeah, I know, right? No, let's be like everybody. All the people are subject to appear.
We're going to talk with Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah. Well, oh, that's a shame. You just missed them. That's Yeah. But yeah, so it's going to be fun. We hope you join us every week. And then we are going to do some of the episode breakdowns, like we're talking about the Adventures of Superboy and some episodes that you like of Batman, the series. And Batman, I always ask you to tell this, because from the moment you told this to me, I think it was hilarious. Please tell them the Gabe story about Batman. It's just, it goes to show how much this show really appealed to kids. Because as you were a kid, you loved it. Oh, this is awesome. As you get into your tweens, the show sucks. There's no way around it. It just does. Oh, this is so stupid. But as you get into your later teens and in adulthood, if you're hip enough, you realize this show's hilarious. It was working on a different level.
Yeah.
But for those kids, it's real.
That's what makes the camp humor work, is because it's two levels.
Yeah.
The adult is watching it, looking at the ridiculousness of it, and the kids are drawn in because this is serious stuff.
Absolutely.
And when we adopted my two boys, Nate and Gabe was the youngest one, and I had the whole series on DVD, and I would let them watch one episode a night before they went to bed, so they'd have to wait till tomorrow to see the next episode. And this was one where Catwoman had them on a huge frying pan. I just
do they buy their stuff at the same place that the Coyote does, and they all come from Acme?
They come from Acme. So she had Batman and Robin on a huge frying pan, and this was the first season. This was during the first season, so we had not been watching it for that long. And again, the boys had no idea that this show ran for 3 seasons. I'm just showing it to them on a nightly basis, and so they leave us with the cliffhanger. And as I'm turning off and asking them, because I would always ask them, how do you think Batman and Robin are going to get out of this? And my youngest Gabe just kind of shook his head, and he said, "Boy, I don't know. They've gotten out of so many of these things. I don't see any way out of this one. I think they're probably done for." It's like, okay. Well, so the rest of the show will be all about Batgirl.
And I'm fine with that, by the way. I love that story. Buck Rogers and Battlestar Galactica and Star Trek, Star Wars. Would that qualify for our show?
I would say Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon certainly do. I would say Star Wars, Star Trek, probably.
We won't devote a lot of time
to those.
But we talk about it,
yeah,
right?
We can talk about certain things.
But Knight Rider's out.
No. Yes, please. No, that's not. I don't want to talk about Knight Rider. I don't want to be ever recorded talking about Knight Rider.
Did you ever notice that there was like a mass proliferation of car shows in the 80s? It's like, let's see, we got a car that talks. We got a red car. We call it a Coyote. Who cares? People love it. We'll do that.
Yeah, and the A-Team isn't a superhero either.
Hey, that van's pretty sweet, right?
That's a whole other podcast if you want to talk about car shows.
Look, let me just tell you, people, now you poo-poo the A-Team, but they are highly trained Do you know how much precision it takes to unload 4 billion rounds an episode and not hit one person?
Yeah. They're like stormtroopers.
That's it. They put those rounds exactly where they wanted them. It's like the G.I. Joe cartoon.
Nowhere.
Yeah. You ever see the G.I. Joe cartoon? Their planes get blown out of the sky with their lasers, and the plane can blow up as long as there was a chute. You know, the silk hit.
Yeah, you know, that's
another
pet peeve of mine. And that, you know, we might devote, we probably could devote an entire episode to this. How did G.I. Joe go from being one guy with kung fu grip to an entire team?
And the
guy with kung fu grip wasn't even on the team.
And here is G.I. Joe with kung fu grip. G.I. Joe has hands that grip. Fingers you hold open and let close. Hands that hold on with a kung fu grip. The grip you help Joe use in self-defense. G.I. Joe with kung fu grip. The hands that grip.
Okay, I would rather have them be an elite fighting force than running around with his 70s man beard and fro.
Hey, that was a real beard.
I know it was a real beard. It was cool. I had one, but still. I'm thinking, I don't think this guy's in the army, okay? Unless he's like, you know, deep entrenched in Vietnam somewhere and hasn't seen a razor in 3 years. But, yeah. Oh, and of course, if we're going to talk about G.I. Joe, we got to talk about the Bionic Man.
Of course.
Colonel Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man, and the new Bionic Transport and Repair Station.
The rocket's crashing! We'll put him in the Bionic Repair Station. We can rebuild him. We'll replace the modules in the Bionic arm. No injury here. We'll have to check his eye. Bionic eye, A-OK. $6 Million Man, ready for action.
New Bionic Transport and Repair Station sold separately. The $6 Million Man, new from Kenner.
I mean...
Well, $6 Million Man, that's nonwithstanding. He qualifies.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, just the action figures were the best. The Mego dolls and all those times.
Oh, yeah. The Mego dolls were... I mean, it was huge because they all had cloth costumes.
Yeah.
Batman and Robin, the dynamic duo. Superman, the Man of Steel. Aquaman, the famous undersea crime fighter. Tarzan of the Apes. Shazam, now featured on network television. Captain America, fighting injustice the world over. Spider-Man, the weird wall climber. The Super Foes, the arch enemies of the superheroes. The Super Gals, Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Batgirl, and Catwoman. The Green Arrow, crime fighter from the forest. Iron Man, power personified.
It wasn't just a piece of plastic with everything painted on. The costumes were cloth. And, you know, the boot, you could take the boots on. Of course, that was a bad thing because you lost the boots and you lost all the accessories. You know.
Well, the first thing I lost, one of the things I was talking about is the $6 Million Man. You know, you had your, basically, and for those of you who don't know what Mego dolls is, you've heard of Barbie dolls. I hate to use that comparison, but it's the best way you can describe it. You know Ken, right? Okay, you had to have a guy in there somewhere. By the way, you know Barbie is the creator's daughter, so he named her after. She named Barbie after her daughter, and she named Ken after her son. Barbie and Ken have historically been paired
brother
off
and
as
sister
love interests. It's a whole weird thing that I don't want to get into with the Ken and Barbie. But anyway, about that size, that's what the G.I. Joe action figures, because we're men. They're action figures. They're not dolls. Well, that was what the Mego were.
They were 8 inches.
Yeah, and the $6 Million Man, but about that size. To give the listeners who don't know, that's basically what we're talking about. Barbie doll sized kind of things. They were larger than your actual smaller little Star Wars figures that you can play with.
Right.
And the $6 Million Man had a real tracksuit. He was very popular in Jersey. But come on, it's a tracksuit joke.
You could get a jeans leisure suit too.
I forgot about that. Oh, and by the way, and I love your performance, and I hope one day we can have you on the show. But if we do, I'm gonna have to ask Lee Majors, why didn't somebody stop you with that mustache in season 3?
I would like to know why somebody didn't stop him from singing about Jamie Summers.
Well, look, the mighty Shatner has many albums out there, and so does Nimoy. And he sang, Spock sang the ballad of Bilbo Baggins. Let us not
Yes.
forget. But no, the reason I'm talking about this, we were just looking at something. You hipped me to something before we went on the air. It's called FiguresToyCompany.com. It's FigurestoyCompany.com. FiguresToyCompany.com. I'm just going to read your text. I just wasted 2 hours on this website, and I think I'm going to waste a lot more of this because what are they doing? Actually?
They are reproducing a lot of the classic Mego characters. That was the company that was out, and they're reproducing a lot of those that were out that we remember, but then they're also producing a whole new line of characters that I know as a kid we always talked about. Oh, they should do this guy, they should do that guy,
right?
And they're doing them. They're doing all the Marvel, the Marvel heroes. They're doing the DC heroes. They're doing Scooby Doo. They're doing the Hanna-Barbera character, Space Ghost, and Johnny Quest.
Hold on, I can't let you go there. If you're going to say the name,
No,
I have to
just
say
not
it right.
right.
I'm sorry. Just one time. You're going to hear this all the time. Sorry.
Go just.
Space Ghost! That's the way it needs to be. Same thing with Birdman.
Space Ghost!
Yeah, it strikes fear into the hearts of criminals everywhere.
And Cartoon Network did not do well with that character, although I absolutely adore
Harvey Birdman, attorney at law.
That was good, but Space Ghost Coast to Coast is
that
great.
was a funny show.
The voice of Space Ghost, George Lowe, is a bloody comic genius, and the stuff that he, hi kids, and of course you have that Brack.
But I don't know who did the voice for Brack.
His name's Andy, and I'm blanking on the last name.
I tell you what, that guy's voice cracked me up every time Brack talked.
Yeah, it was just brilliant, and from what I understand,
he had one of my favorite things that Brack did. He had a song called "Don't Touch Me." Don't touch me.
I remember, and it's sad that I know this verbatim, but there's one little sketch. He goes, "One day I hired a monkey to take notes for me in class. I was sitting there in my mind a complete blank.
Well, the monkey scribbled on little pieces of paper. At the end of the week, the teacher said, class, I want you to write a paper using your notes. So I wrote a paper that said, hello, my name is Bingo. I like to climb on things. Can I have a banana? Eat cake. I got enough. When I told my mom about it, she said, I told you never trust a monkey. The end.
How do you not love that? Oh, man. So, yeah, we knew they had barbaric cartoons, but I love modern reinterpretations of stuff like that when they can take it and make it funny. Or just make it cool.
But
they did show a reference, though.
They did. Well, that's the thing. They made it funny without making fun of it.
Right. Yeah, because it's really easy to make fun of something and go, oh, ha, 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 ha. Yeah, but they knew what it was, and then they said, yeah, but look, we're in on the joke too.
Right.
And we're letting you in on it. This is just a different version of what they should be.
Yeah.
And I think Space Ghost hosting a David Letterman type show with, his cast of characters forced to be his sidekicks is just great.
Yeah, the villains having to be his Doc Severinsen and
Paul Schaefer's just, oh God. I remember, I think it was the Christmas, New Year's in 97. We're both professional entertainers, so we're always working on the holidays. And there was 1 year I didn't have first New Year's Eve off I had had in like 10 years. I didn't know what to do with myself. So I sat home watching cartoons, as you want to do. And they ran this marathon of Space Ghost.
Oh, wow.
of Space Ghost Coast to Coast and Cartoon
Probably because
Planet.
they were getting ready to lose the licensing fees and wanted to show them all.
Maybe, but they ran this marathon of cartoons. So I watched 6 hours straight of Cartoon Planet, and I was just in pure heaven. It just, every episode, and I mean this in the best possible way, every episode was dumber than the last. It was pure bliss. I can't think of a better way to ring in a new year than with those guys.
Well, the funny... The only thing I remembered is that every time Space Ghost, and he did every now and then, they had like a celebrity guest star on it, and but he would just ask them these just ridiculous, have this big movie star that was there to talk about their movie, and he would be like, so which of my muscles do you think is best? Or what?
And like I said, I don't know. I hope we can get George to get him on here. That's one person I'm going to try to go after. I may not be successful. I don't have that kind of juice, but who knows? But I don't know if they did this. I think, if I'm not mistaken, those are real press junkets. Because, for those of you who may not know, a press junket is where a celebrity sits in a hotel room for literally 12 hours a day for like 3 days in a row, and at 10-minute clips talks to members of the Weehawken Gazette, and everybody comes through. It's not just the big entertainment. Right. If you can get a press pass, you can talk to Oscar winners. So they're answering this stuff day by day, and I think before the show went on the air, they got press passes, so they're going to these junkets, kind of Borat style in a way, that they don't know what's happening. So these proxy are asking these questions. I don't know if they told them, hey, this is Space Ghost asking you this, or they're just asking them weird questions, because literally when they would cut back to the celebrity on some of the questions, Space Ghost, it wasn't acting. They were like genuinely befuddled at, what? Yeah. Wait, I'm here to promote, what? Yeah. Which the awkwardness I thought was the best part.
Do you think my mask looks good? It's like, what?
And if you got one of the celebrities that would play along, they're like, "Oh, no, it works for you, man. Yeah, maybe a little darker around the eyes, but yeah, it's great." So that, I don't know. That's pretty much what we got in store for you. I think the more shenanigans like this.
Yeah, and hopefully, as listeners pick up, if anybody listening has an idea of something they'd like us to cover that we didn't talk about. How long have we been talking for? Like 9 hours now?
Yeah, who knows? But please give us ideas, because we're not bright enough to come up with them on our own.
But if there's something that we missed, or a character that you think we should talk about, or some kind of genre, I will say this: we're probably not going to delve too much into the world of the actual comics.
Yeah, that's important to know.
We're really going to look at more of the media presentations of the heroes, audio, visual. Cartoons, any kind of recreation of the hero, without getting into the comic book part per se, other than the Power Records, because they came with a book. But I can't listen to somebody talk about a comic book. Right? And on page 12, when he throws his fist in.
Hey, page 12 was the best stuff, man. And I will say that we are also going to talk about the modern Marvel movies and the modern DC movies, but not a lot. We will say, hey, the Aquaman movie was awesome. It just came out on Blu-ray. I love what Jason Momoa did. Check it out. That'll be about as much as we devote to it, because everybody
that's about as much time as DC deserves to be devoted to.
Very true. Oh, man, we could do a whole episode on that.
Although, that being said, they've done very well with their TV presentations.
Oh, my word. And we may do an episode where we do just, one episode only, all the CW, do a wrap up of something, what they're doing. I know for a solid fact we're going to be talking about the Crisis on Infinite Earths when that happens. How can you not?
Absolutely.
But we're not going to be doing a lot of modern stuff. If you're tuning in every week saying, hey, what happened on Flash this week? Unless it's something really super cool, we're going to stay pretty much... We were talking about like 60s.
Unless we happen to get Grant Gustin on here to talk about.
Oh, it'll be all Flash all the time. I'll rebrand the damn show to Flash Facts, okay? But we pretty much said late 60s because of Batman, but mainly our sweet spot's probably going to be the mid 70s to the mid 80s. Probably that decade from like 73 to 85 or so is where we're going to stay, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We might. I think it is important, though, that we at least do a throwback show to the serials that did kind of start it all, because you had the original Captain Marvel, you had Superman, you had Batman, you had Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, and the Tarzan films. You've got to look into those too. So. We'll dip back into the past and into the start of those.
Yeah, and I am a lifelong just head over heels till I die fan of Lois and Clark. So whether he likes it or not, I'll be talking about that show a lot throughout the entire run. But, here and there. I think we probably won't go any
since I'm
further.
editing, I'll edit all that out anyway.
Yeah, right. Oh, you watch me. So we will be talking about Lois and Clark, but really I don't think... Well, let's just decide it right now on the spot. How far do you want to go? Probably no further than, 97, 95, 97. But and that would just be TV.
Yeah.
I don't even think we talk about X-Men by saying, more than just saying, Bryan Singer did X-Men. That started the modern wave of comic movies. Good night.
Yeah, well, I think most people are up with their knowledge on the current Marvel Cinematic Universe and, quite honestly, the current DC Universe.
Yeah.
If we happen to get a chance to talk to somebody, we'll pull it back into there. But I'm really thinking, let's go back and talk about the things that we grew up with. That a lot of people look back and go, "My God, that's stupid. How did you get through it?" And it's like, you have to understand, this is all we had.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
that was it, and so the effects weren't the best, and by today's standards, almost even laughable. But you got to think, in 1977, an 11-year-old kid watching this is thinking this is the bomb.
Oh yeah, and I will say, as far as effects go, I've gone on record at every opportunity, and I will do it publicly till the day I die. The Superboy television series that was shot in Orlando, Florida, season 1 at Disney MGM Studios, and then the seasons 2 through 3 at Universal Studios, Florida. That series, the Ilya Salkind TV series with Superboy, to this day, in my mind, has the single best live-action flying ever put on film. Better than the movies, better than anything. And when you say, well, what, Justice League? No, that's CG. I'm talking about wire work and live action. The single best flying you'll ever find in anything that flies is in Superboy.
Yeah.
One of the reasons is because the flight team from the motion pictures, because Ilya Salkind and his father Alexander Salkind did the Christopher Reeve movies from the 70s. The swing gang is what they're called. The guys who flew them from those movies, who developed the flying, worked on Superboy week after week. And if you do something, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. Right. Now, Superboy's blue screen effects, they're rough. Some of it's kind of, the angles don't work. They get the job done, but it falls into that, like we're talking with the Shazam, you're like, ooh, ah. But Superboy recognized that, and they recognized where their strength was, and as the series went on, they started doing more and more live. And they said, oh, okay. And if they flew them at green screen, they flew them at night, because night looks better. Mm-hmm. But they didn't do a lot of daytime stuff, and they always relied heavily on the wire work they did out there. So that's very cool. Some of the stories that we've got from Shazam is just absolutely astonishing.
Yeah, especially in the first season, because Jackson Bostwick, who played Captain Marvel in the first season, was a stuntman. And so he did a lot of his own stunts and came up with a lot of those ideas. So they look real because they are real. And Jackson Bostwick is doing them.
Tell him the quick story. I know if we get Jackson on the show, he'll tell it better than we both can. But tell him the story about when Shazam had to bore a hole into the ground. That's real.
Yeah, and they shot it at I think they shot it at half speed so they could speed it up. And they had Jackson on a winch that just went around and around and around and around. Yeah. But they had to keep doing the scene over and over again.
Well, he got sick, but the point that's not the point I was talking about. Is this is really some fool hanging from wires about 50 feet in the air, being thrown at a fairly decent speed, head first into a hole that said, "Yeah, you'll be fine, Jackson."
Yeah.
It was almost a disregard for their stars back then. Not just on Shazam, on any of those. Like going, "Oh, you'll be fine."
Well, I give shows like Shazam and Isis a pass on a lot of this stuff, more so than the other shows, because you have to keep in mind they were Saturday morning.
Oh, they were made for $1.98 for kids.
Their budgets were so cheap, and they had to do what they had to do, and they came up with some interesting workarounds. That's for sure.
Well, Shazam, because it was done on such a small budget, and we joke, they were pushing a lifestyle agenda back then. Hey, it's the outdoors, that's great, because that is something that was going on in the 70s, but it also helped. We all know Billy Batson lives in Fawcett City, the operative word being city. I don't think I saw a single skyscraper in 3 seasons of Shazam. They were always in the woods, out in the mountains and stuff, because that was the backlot. That was what was available to him. But what it helped doing that was, production value. I don't have this cheesy alien world that I'm creating on the original series of Star Trek that looks, oh, look, fake bushes, I buy it. No, you have expanse and depth, and that added so much. So for free, they're getting all this production value. So they've really maximized what their available settings were versus what they could spend. They did a fantastic job in that respect, I think, on Shazam.
They were also very good continuity-wise. In each season, a couple of times, Billy would always talk about, I'm on this break from Wiz TV. So,
right.
Where he had a job as a reporter. And so he was always saying he was on a break.
Mm-hmm.
To satisfy, but and again, Saturday morning with an even more limited budget than some of the other shows had, you can't really go up against Dr. Savannah or some of these other characters.
Sure.
The whole point of that show was kind of and why it works still to this day is that the morals are still there. The morals that they were trying to teach kids. Don't lie. Don't steal. Treat your friends with respect. Treat animals with care and love. And things like that. Just simple lessons that you're trying to get through to kids. And what a better way to do it than with Captain Marvel.
There's an episode of Superboy in the first season where somebody robs a bank dressed as Superboy. And when Superboy stops somebody, the cops come up and slap the cuffs on him. He goes, well, what's going on? They draw down on him. They say, you're under arrest, Superboy. He says, what? He says, well, first you run us off the road, and then you try to save our lives. What's going on here? So they arrest him, and he stays in jail of his own free will. In Shazam,
he did the same thing.
He almost did it one better, because Superboy allowed himself to be arrested and put in jail. Shazam actually turned himself in.
Yeah.
We were really saying, like, look, kids, I know this is wrong, you know this is wrong, but this is the right thing to do, and I will stay in these bars until justice has been served. The judge was out of town or something, couldn't get back for 3 days. Right. He goes, well, I'm going to hang out here. Right. And they're like, why? And he's like, because that's the law.
Yeah.
And you don't get that today. You don't get that, respect the law, respect this, respect the rules.
Yeah, they were always big on let's go to the proper authorities.
Mm-hmm.
They were always big on the proper authorities and kids learning some respect for the law, and I think that was a good way to shift these characters, because they're not really fighting super villains per se. So it's like, why do we need Captain Marvel to catch bank robbers?
Right.
Well, because Captain Marvel's there for another reason. Because Billy relates to these kids at his level.
Right.
And Captain Marvel's just kind of there to help out in the situation, but it's more or less a teaching tool.
Yeah. And although it's annoying to the teenager and us as adults who are fans who want to see the cape, to the kids, it probably frightened them, but Captain Marvel really didn't show up in that show a lot. It was really Billy's show, and Captain Marvel actually happened. The show should have been called Billy, because Shazam's barely in the show.
In the first season.
And
in the second and third seasons, he shows up a lot more.
But what I mean by that is, Billy he does absolutely everything. Captain Marvel, for those of you who don't know, Billy Batson is Shazam. He says a magic word. He comes from a kid, turns into it. If you haven't seen the new movie that's out, which is amazing, by the way, they did a great job with it, you should know. But if you don't, there it is. But that was his big gun. The moment something goes down, he could say, Shazam, become Captain Marvel, and stop it. Show lasts 30 seconds.
Right.
But he held out to the last possible seconds, showing that the hero, the superhero, Billy, one could argue, is almost more heroic than Captain Marvel, because he does every possible thing he can do to stop the situation or to help. And only when he can't, only when there's no other recourse, does he become does he bring in that power. And I think that was really good. That was kind of teaching kids, look, you, just because you're normal, you're regular old, yourself, you have power. You can do that.
Yeah, they early on in the series, they set it out that Billy's only to call on Captain Marvel in absolute necessity.
Right.
And so they just kind of, they set it up that way. And, he didn't appear enough in the first season, and I think they took that in consideration because he did appear much more often in the second and third seasons. And there were a number of people who became stars later on in their careers that made appearances on both Shazam and ISIS between those two shows.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had Danny Bonaducci was on, Mike Lookinland. That was an episode. It's just nice to see him doing something other than Bobby Brady.
Yeah. I was watching an episode of these kids, once again, teens, they own their own skydiving equipment. But the older brother, I couldn't figure it out. I'm looking at him, I'm like, man, I know him. He's, I always call character actors like that 70s guy or 80s. I was like, oh, hey, there's 70s guy. What? I couldn't put his face. And then a buddy of mine was at the house and he walks by and looks at the TV. He says, oh, where's Niedermeyer? And that's when it dawned on me. Oh, he's the head of the jerk fraternity from Animal House.
Right.
In 3 or 4 years, he's going to be in the Animal House movie, and it's really cool to see those people when they're first starting.
There was an episode, and I can't remember the name of the episode, but the actor who played the security guard was the original Billy Batson from the serial.
I didn't know that, but speaking of badges, I saw William Campbell. Trelane from the Squire of Gothos in Star Trek, he played a sheriff.
Oh,
in one of the episodes, I'm like going,
yes.
Picking up a paycheck in the 70s. Way to go, Bill. So it was kind of a dumping ground at one point. Hey, you got to make the money. But yeah, so this is, kind of give you a flavor of the stuff that we're going to talk about. And like, Pete said, we're going to really dial in. There's going to be entire episodes where we talk just about this.
Right.
And it'll be like an hour or in change or whatever of just that specific. But this kind of gives you a hodgepodge of where we're going. We hope you'll join us for the ride.
Yeah, we're going to start the show proper next week with the actual episode number 1.
Yes.
It'll be worth much, much more than episode 0.
No, see, episode 0 is the rarity. That's the one that you want to have in mint pristine condition.
Right. Or we just won't air this one at all until... halfway through the run of the show, and we're so popular that people want to know
how did it all
begin?
Or mostly like most mint things, you just never open it.
Right.
To keep it in mint condition. So although we encourage you to download this podcast, never play it.
Yes. Don't keep it.
No, you keep it, but you don't play it. That way it's pristine.
Oh, yes.
It's unlistened to.
Unlistened to.
Yes. But tune in next week.
Yeah, and next week we're going to start focusing on our first series. So tune in next week for the adventures of...
Our Records presents...
That does it. This time Jameson's gone too far. The Spider-Man Menace, a new series by J. Jonah Jameson. Every time something happens in this town, Jameson blames me.
Power Records presents...
Hello, Commissioner Gordon. Batman here. Yes? The Joker escaped.
Here we go again, Batman. Things were too quiet for a while. When your hotline rang, I knew it spelled trouble.
Right? It's going to be very cool.
I think it's going to be good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm Pete Gould.
I'm Peter Alden.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. The Adventures of podcast with Pete Gould and Peter Alden is part of the Theme Parkology Network. Interviews were arranged by and for Theme Parkology. The Adventures of podcast is strictly a fan publication, not affiliated in any way with DC Comics, Marvel Comics, or any of their affiliates or subsidiaries. Please visit us online at themeparkology.com, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Adventures of Show. All trademarks, product names, company names, and logos mentioned are the property of their respective owners. All opinions stated within do not necessarily reflect the opinions of DC Comics, Marvel Comics, or any other production company. Don't forget to subscribe to The Adventures of podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll get a notification as soon as our latest episode drops. While you're at it, please rate us with a 5-star review. This will help other fans find our show.